Visibility in Warzone is still pretty dreadful. So today I've got an in-depth Nvidia Filters guide for Caldera that will bump that visibility up and allow you to see enemies so much easier. For the first bit of this setup, obviously we're going to need an Nvidia graphics card in the PC. If you don't have that, this will not work for you. That should go without saying. Open up GeForce Experience on your PC before you open up Warzone, click the cog icon in the top right hand corner, and then you're going to come to the in-game overlay, turn that on, click on settings, click on keyboard shortcuts, and set a keyboard shortcut that you would like to use to open up the in-game overlay. It's Alt-Z by default, but I've changed mine here to something that I like. You can do the same. Once that's done and you're in Warzone, another prerequisite before we get into the filters is to go to Options, go to Graphics, then Quality, and we're going to change our anti-aliasing mode to Filmic SMAA T2X. By default, this is very, very blurry, but we're going to be doing some things with the Nvidia filters that work very nicely with this anti-aliasing setting, so do that before we do any filters. Let's jump into Plunder Quads, Don't Fill, and we're going to go find somewhere on the map that we can look out over a good area so we can play around with the settings and see what's going to work for us. This is not going to be one of those guides where I tell you exactly what you should set everything to. Instead, I'm going to give you an overall range that you should go between when setting up these filters. And then dependent on your preference, your monitor, and how you like your game to look, you can dial between the settings that I give you as a guide. Once you've dropped in, you've found yourself a nice area that's hopefully not got too many enemies around it that are trying to kill you while you're trying to set this up. We can jump into the settings. So press your keyboard shortcut for your Nvidia overlay. Here it is, and you're going to click Game Filter over on the left. From here, you can then move from the off setting to any of these styles. These will all be empty if you haven't used these before. For me, I've got one set up as my final one, so I'm just going to go to 3, which is a blank filter. We're going to be using 4 different Nvidia filters in combination to achieve that visibility that I showed you at the beginning of the video. And we're going to start off with brightness and contrast, which is a filter which is going to help out with the overall lighting problems of the game. Mainly that the bright bits are too bright and the dark bits are too dark, so you've either got a sun ray in your face blocking your view. It's not as bad as it was on Verdansk, I do know, but it's still not great. And shadows are still a problem. If people sit in shadowed areas, especially amongst all these trees, it's very hard to see them. So open up the brightness and contrast area with the drop-down arrow. And the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to dial the highlights, which are the really bright sections, all the way to minus 100%, and the shadows down to minus 100%. This is going to leave you with a very flat image because essentially what you've done is you've made the dark bits brighter and you've made the bright bits darker, getting a very level lighting, which is decent for visibility, but as you can see, it makes the game look pretty horrific. So we bring back some of that contrast with the contrast setting. I would bring this up to around 30 to 40%. We'll go for about 40 for now. Just brings back some of that nice contrast. And then we're going to finish off brightness and contrast by bringing down the exposure. I'm going to use the arrow keys on the keyboard. It's a bit easier than trying to drag. Bring that down to about minus 10%. Sort of flattens out the image a little bit more. And then gamma, we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to bring it down to around minus 5. It just brings down that overall brightness a little bit. That's personal preference, the gamma and the exposure. Play around the kind of 0 to minus 10%, see what works nicely for you. Next up, next filter is going to be color. So this is going to help bring out some of the colors which aren't present and also just give us overall more vibrance in our game. So jump into color and click the drop down arrow. The game currently looks pretty horrific. Bring tint color to 40%. The reason we bring it to 40% is that 40% is sort of around a green-blue color. By default, Caldera is very orange, almost overpoweringly orange. And when we bring up the vibrance later on, it will just make that orange stand out far too much. So we put a tint color of 40% on, and then just put the tint intensity back to around 10%. All that's going to do is just bring out some of the missing kind of green and blue to add back in to counteract some of the red and the orange that the game pushes a bit too much on Caldera. Then the final thing we're going to do, we're not going to touch temperature because it's not a good setting. We're going to touch the vibrance and we're going to bring this up to something that you feel like it's nice to look at as a personal preference. This is going to come down to really how much you like your colors to be popping. Some people don't like it to be popping too much. It's also going to come down to how colorful your monitor is in terms of the colors that your monitor puts out. Some monitors have really flat colors, so you're going to need to bring this vibrance to like 100. My monitor, it has decent colors already, so I can go with around 70 or so. Works nicely for me. Next up, this is where it gets very, very nice. It's going to be details. This is how we're going to bring out some of the sharpness and specifically the clarity. This is where the visibility really comes in. So click the drop down arrow and you'll see there is a setting called clarity. Bring this all the way up to 100%. You'll see as I drag this all the way around, what this does is it unflattens the image from a kind of sharpness perspective. HDR toning, bring this down because when we have this too high, it makes the game look almost like all the colors are completely wrong. We're going to bring this down to minus 50%. This is what I found on Caldera gives you the most neutral looking lighting and color. Bloom, turn that all the way off. Gets rid of that haziness, that one with that white haziness. We do not like that. Turn that all the way off. And then sharpen, I reckon you should put this on 70% minimum. I'm going to leave it at 70% for now. If that's not good for you, you don't like that how that looks, you maybe want it a bit more, you can turn it up. If you think it's too much, bring it down a little bit. But there is one more thing we're going to add, and that is sharpen. Even though we've added a sharpen in details, we're going to add the sharpen filter. This is a filter which I used to actually control in the Nvidia control panel outside the game, but you can't do that anymore. They've removed that from in a recent Nvidia update to the graphics card. So now if you want to do this, you have to do it in the game filter. So turn ignore film grain down to 0%. What having this on actually does is it ends up taking some of the things in the distance and it kind of ignores the sharpening on them. Just leave it on 0%. And then intensity, we're going to bring this up to 70% again. I like going 70-70 on our two sharpens. It really leaves you with a lovely, sharp-looking image, as you can see in the background. And that leaves you with what is the final result of these game filters. Now, I've been playing with these for the past couple of weeks, and I am able to spot people so much easier. If there's an enemy standing down by this sign, for example, if I'm looking at here, I can see that sign in such detail now. Let's compare it. You can see it's so much more blurry. It's so much more hazy. He could potentially blend in. The colors would blend together. And we compare that with what we have now. There's no blending in. I can spot this guy easily if there's someone behind this tree, if there's someone behind this sign. It's easy. And that right there is the full Nvidia filters for Caldera. Follow the guidelines I've given. Some of those settings were things you have to set at those specific things. Some of them were things that you can play around with and get a personalized experience from your filters. So I hope you found this video enjoyable. If you did, smash the like button down below. Subscribe for more videos from me coming very soon. And also, if you're looking to improve your FPS in Warzone, then I've got a video covering all the best settings for Season 2 of Warzone Pacific. It's linked just over here. And yeah, so go check this one out straight after. Thanks very much for watching, guys. I'll catch you guys in my next one. Bye-bye.